I don't think so.
Oh, yeah. I've known the family for years. I knew this outstanding individual, nothing like his son. It's bad. When your mother writes something like that, it's bad. I wondered. I like
Spread
it.
out.
Spread out.
Don't get them too comfortable. You might be here all night.
Yeah, it looks
Sound
like it's a long agenda.
So I like uncomfortable chairs for meetings,
Yeah.
and then it makes them shorter.
I always tell my wife when I was playing semi-pro football, everything was up here, now it's starting to drop and go like this.
All that, Chester drawers.
There you go. There you go.
Very good. Okay.
Haven't heard that one, but that's a good one.
That's funny.
So it is 5:30. I believe that's the time scheduled for our workshop. So with that, to make all the time useful time we can, we will go ahead and kick it off. Chief Frawley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members, member of the community, city staff, Rick Frawley, Fire Chief. I want to thank council for their time as we present an update on some of the information that we've gathered with our partners from Clearwater Financial. I have Chase here with Clearwater. He's going to be doing a deep dive for council on some of the information that we've been able to gather. As a refresher, we started this public engagement process about 3 months ago as we were planning to look at ways that we could address some of the issues within the fire department for some of our facilities. Primarily aging facilities, how we can also enhance facilities to improve response times, and also looking for better locations where we can place new facilities as we grow and as we anticipate even increased call volume. As we mentioned in previous presentations to council, we have Station 4 and Station 1 as our two primary areas of focus as we look to improve facilities. Station 4 being a new facility in the Lake and Karcher area due to donations of developer lands there, and that would address a lot of the needs that we have along the Karcher corridor, as well as Station 2 off of Ustick, which is our busiest station. And then Station 1, aging infrastructure, it's beyond further expansion, and it would be cost prohibitive to add additional space or facilities to that facility. So I'm now going to hand it over to Chase. He's going to talk to you about a lot of the public engagement that we've conducted in the last 3 months. He's going to show you some of the survey data that we've collected and also answer any questions as we go down this journey together and we look for options in the future to fund our new facilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mayor and members of council. Excited to be with you again today and talk to you about the information that we've gathered so far from the public and share that with you. Wanted to walk through and give you some insight into the different public outreach efforts that have been in place over the last several months, and give you an idea of the different avenues that we've gone through to collect this information, and also help educate the public so that they understand the needs of the fire department and then potential options for funding those needs. On the list in front of you is a list of specific events and also organizations that we've had booths at or representation at, presenting to homeowners associations, Chamber of Commerce, Hispanic Chamber. We had been at the farmers market Tuesday nights for several of those, the Caldwell Night Rodeo, Canyon County Fair, and at each of those events we've had material and representation to answer questions, information for access to the survey that we sent out to get community feedback from that, and also to talk about the facility needs. And those events and the overwhelming feedback from that, the questions related to that, has been positive in support of Caldwell Fire and moving forward in those expansion in those two areas. So with that one area. Another aspect that's been put in place is updates to the website, to the Caldwell Fire website, which has access to the survey We've also posted interim survey results from the last presentation so that the community could see kind of the direction of feedback that we're getting from the community, and then updates on that, timeline of events, history of Caldwell Fire, and some overview of those facility needs. Included a couple of maps showing the current response times with the 3 stations, what that looks like with station number 4, to help educate the community of what that means, depending on where you live, that expansion, how that would reduce response times depending on the area that you live in, and increase the timeliness of whether it's a EMS response or a fire response. We also created some material, these 2 specific pieces, one in Spanish and one in English, and we've tried to do everything in Spanish as well to educate the community that needs that communication in Spanish as well, is a card. About 800 have been distributed at those different events that we talked about earlier. With this, with the main focus is driving folks to the survey so we could get feedback, and then also giving them some information and education about how busy Caldwell Fire is and the responses that they have, and kind of the workload that Caldwell Fire has with their current facilities. We've put out a couple of other, we've created a poster to be used at those events as well, a tabletop flyer, and then the bottom left is a leaflet that went out in all public utility billings. So that went out driving the folks to the survey, the opportunity to share their feedback and learn some additional information about the needs of Caldwell Fire. There's been quite a few posts, both on the fire's social media pages and the city social media pages. These are just a couple of examples of posts on Caldwell Fire. A lot of the posts have been shared by other organizations and groups in the community, which is a great indication that the information is getting out to a broad range of citizens. It's also very good to report back that the feedback from the social media posts has been positive in support of Caldwell Fire. Oftentimes, as we do this, social media, as I'm sure you're aware, is the first place that a lot of negative feedback and response comes to get that information, and we haven't had that feedback come through social media. So another great indication of support of the community for the needs for these facilities and expansion. Another piece of the process has been some stakeholder interviews. We've identified key stakeholder groups. We've reached out to 8 different groups, and some of those included HOAs, property management companies, some neighboring municipalities and peer organizations to talk through what Caldwell Fire is doing, their facility needs, and get their feedback on what that means, paying for it, and I've asked a variety of questions, and some takeaways from that, and we'll have an actual summarized report that we will get to you and to Chief Frawley as well, but wanted to give you some feedback from those interviews. And overall, very positive feedback of Caldwell Fire, very supportive of the department and also the staff members. A lot of feedback that was indicated that it was positive for the fire team, the firefighters themselves, to be involved in this public engagement process and sharing the need for the facilities, that resonated well with communities. There was good support for consolidation of admin and Station 1 in that rebuild. There was some good feedback of some cautions about that around having the administrative and a working fire station in the same location, some hurdles that may come from having them in the same location, but overall positive feedback there. We did also ask those stakeholders to share the survey to their networks, and we did have a HOA group and a property management company that emailed that out to their network, so another great opportunity to share that out and get that to the public. The overall, it's interesting, and which is fairly common. We asked about, bonding and financing as a tool and get some feedback, and often the initial response is, don't want to bond, and we get that and support that. Is if you don't have to, definitely don't do that. But there, as we talked through the needs of the facilities and ways to fund it, there was support for doing that. There was feedback that if you can pay it off early, pay it off early. That's a very positive thing, which we would agree is a very prudent thing to do too. And some feedback too that a lot of times bonds are confusing and with the citizens and how that works. So they definitely commended the city and Caldwell Fire being proactive in educating the community on the needs here and what that looks like to pay for it. So to hopefully alleviate some of that confusion for the community to understand. So some really good feedback from those stakeholders. We've also held 2 citizens committee meetings, and they've been really successful opportunities to bring in business and community leaders from across the city, a wide variety of folks, and share with them and educate them on Caldwell Fire's needs, the current facility situations. We've had them at Station 1, so they have an opportunity to see it firsthand what that station's capabilities are from a facility standpoint, and also share with them what it looks like to expand, ways to do that, and then shared the survey with them, and then gotten feedback from them. Some point of feedback is, that they had was really emphasizing that, Caldwell Fire it's not just fire response, but helping the community make sure they understand that EMS is a significant piece of Caldwell Fire as well, not just responding to fires. But overwhelming support from them and their network groups as well for this process, and Caldwell Fire expanding and being able to meet those needs from that Citizens Committee group. And here's a list of those members, so you can see who was involved. And not everybody was able to make it to each of the meetings, but all of them have had the information shared with them and communicated to them. Jumping into the survey and getting into the survey responses, as of Friday, we had 466 responses, which is a great turnout for survey results. And jumping into those results, the prioritization of the services that Caldwell Fire does, and again, just a reminder, the survey, we kind of had 2 goals. One, we want to get community feedback. What does the community think? Where's their support? What concerns do they have? And then also do some education on what Caldwell Fire does, and kind of history about their needs and whatnot. So kind of 2 aspects to each of the questions in the survey. But fire protection and EMS came in as the top 2 service areas that Caldwell Fire provides that the community sees as the most important pieces. Fire protection, 90% viewed it as very important or important, so strong support for the need for fire protection services. As we looked at and we gauged the community on a few different data points about the importance of Caldwell Fire, and the item that struck the chord the most is the fact that Caldwell Fire per person, per firefighter is the busiest in the state of Idaho, and that resonated with the community, that you've got really busy firefighters responding to the calls that they have. And it's also good to point out, in looking at each of those responses, they're not all exactly the same, although they are all generally very supportive, which does indicate we didn't have a bunch of people just clicking the same response and going through kind of, they were thinking and changing those responses based on how they felt. So it's good to see that as well. Talking specifically about Station 1 and Station 4, we asked some questions about the consolidation, the history of Station 1, and kind of the current condition to gauge support if that changed any of the public's feelings toward support of a replacement or expanding that. And it stayed very in the supportive category around that level 1 support. And the same with station number 4 with the growth and expansion and the opportunity to potentially partner with Nampa Fire as well. They're stayed supportive of Station 4 expansion. When we get into the kind of maybe the meat or the toughest question when it comes to paying for it, everybody supports fire. You want to have good fire support, having the facilities to do that, but how do you pay for it? Specifically asking the question about property tax levy. We maintained solid. Most responses were very supportive for a property tax levy in order to support or finance that. And also asking the question specifically, are you supportive of a bond to pay for that? And very similar results for a bond as well, with most people being very supportive of that as an avenue that council could use to fund those expansions and new facilities. Was interesting, we asked kind of a prioritization, Station 1 versus Station 4, and Station 4 was the preferred, I guess, as from a priority perspective in the survey results from the community. And looking at, we asked about reserve funds as another avenue of potential funding these, and gave the community a few different options of what their preferences would be for using city reserve funds. And the feedback from the city is that fire AMS would be number 1, city pool would be number 2, and deferred maintenance, administrative building, parks, and then there were some other responses as well, and we'll get you details on those. Came last, but some interesting feedback from the community on potential opportunities or use of any available reserve funds that you may or may not have as a city. And then a couple of demographic questions. It was good to see that with the growth and a lot of folks moving into the city, that the representation was pretty spread evenly between those that have been here for a long time and those that have been here for less than 5 years. So I got a pretty good representation of folks, longtime residents and more recent residents. Most everybody that responded were Caldwell residents. And then just a general overview, a question on kind of what's important issue facing Idaho right now, and growth was heavily number 1, which definitely leads into this discussion on expansion of the fire facilities and addressing growth that's happening here in Caldwell. So key takeaways from this for you to consider where we are right now with the public engagement campaign. One, the fact that Caldwell firefighters are busy it definitely resonates with the citizens, and they understand that that's important and how that fits into the facility needs that would enable them to also meet those needs in responding to all of their calls that they get on a daily basis. 78% were either supportive or very supportive of a property tax funding levy in order to fund the new facilities. 75% were supportive or very supportive of a bond to finance the new facilities, and most folks were supportive. 85% were supportive of reserve funds being used to fund those facilities as well. We did get some good information on feedback that folks ways that they would like to hear about updates and information from the city and Caldwell Fire, email, social media, and direct mail being the top 3, which that was good feedback. Also was confirming in the information that was shared that all 3 of those were used as methods to share the information about Caldwell Fire and the survey that went out. We did email out a newsletter. I forgot to mention that earlier as well. The newsletter went out, I think, twice. I think the survey went out in the newsletter. And social media posts, and then the direct mail through the utility billing process. And with 56% of respondents really see growth as a big issue in the city of Caldwell and in Idaho. With that, looking forward, we do have some I guess we call kind of, meet the chief events that Chief Raleigh has scheduled coming up starting the 1st of September, to invite the public out to do continued outreach, answer questions, share information about the needs, and at what point in time the council does decide on an avenue moving forward to fund, to share that information as well with the community. And we'll continue to have the survey open until the end of August. At that point, we'll close it, and then we'll have a final report and share that information with you as well. And then we'll follow your direction that we do have in the engagement, get out the vote piece. So should council decide to move forward with a financing and want to move forward with a bond resolution, would help with the process of informing the public on what that means and encouraging folks to get out and to share their opinions via the vote in that process. So we would follow your direction moving forward past that. But at this point, stand for any questions you guys may have.
Thank you so much. Questions, Councilor McGee?
Thank you, Mayor. And my experience tells me, and Jace, I'd be interested to hear, it's more of a 30,000-foot question, but my experience tells me that bonding, going out for bonding, is becoming more and more acceptable to the general public, except for a jail bond in Canyon County. So setting that aside,
Yeah.
but it does seem to me like when we did Garvey bonding back in the early 2000s, at first there was a lot of opposition to that and a lot of misunderstanding about it. But it seems to me, and looking at your statistics, 75% in this community would support it, 71% just supported the Valley View School bond. Do you see, as you've done this, do you see a change there in more of the public supporting bonding, or what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I see that going both ways. I think a lot of the change that we see has to do with education and information. So the process that you've gone through here to educate, to be out in front, unfortunately, sometimes with the bonding process, the initial reaction is negative, and there is a perception that it kind of comes last minute and is maybe a little bit forced, and it's maybe a little bit, you got to do this or else type of a situation, which has happened oftentimes, and which creates misinformation and distrust. So the more open the process is, the more you're able to educate on, okay, what is the need? What's this bond going to do? Do I really need it? And use that process to get on the same page with the public. The more support we see in that process with the public is like, yes, this is a need. The city needs this, and that is a viable mechanism to pay for that. And we're in supportive of doing that. So we do see that, and really from our perspective, that's from information, from getting good information out and having that conversation early on.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of echo that real quick with great job that Chief Raleigh and Jason Clearwater has done, is informing. It wasn't just, let's throw this on the wall and see what sticks. I mean, a lot of research and understanding. I think and the public appreciate that because they know that you are trying to be good stewards of their money, not just build it big and see what comes, but actually looking at the needs, asking the people what do they want, what do they feel in their community. So they've done a great job. So kudos again to Chief Raleigh and to Jason and his company, Clearwater, for making sure that happens. So it's been great. Councilor Stark.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sure, Mr. Perry, it's how you ask the question sometimes you get the right answers, right? And I saw on that one slide that you did discuss cost, because if you ask the question, would you like to have another firehouse closer to your resident? The answer, yeah, absolutely. If it costs you $150 more on taxes a year, would you still want it? A lot of times the answer is, well, I'd have to think about that. Yeah. So I see you answered, or you asked some of the questions. Was the $15 or whatever you guys presented, was that actual cost based on the type of firehouse you were going to build, the manning portion of it and the equipment portion? Was that accurate?
Yeah. Great question. I'll let Chief talk too. Yeah, we use estimated costs for building both those facilities and ran numbers based on conservative cost to finance it, and backed into what that would be per household per 100,000. And ask it, to your point, you can't, the question makes a big difference. And so both the bond question and the property tax question were separate individual questions, and they were direct and pointed to that, because we didn't want anybody to, because if we get feedback at this point, you know, for council, and it is skewed by any means, and then the public comes back to a vote later on, and you think you're getting one thing, it doesn't do anybody any good. You know, the public needs to know, yes, or okay, we're asking a question out of bond. Clearly, is that really what you support or not? So we can share that with you, and you can make those decisions.
And to tag in what Jace was just kind of outlining, we really wanted to land at a number that would be realistic and could be deliverable, and we didn't want to overpromise and underdeliver when it came to that information, because the transparency piece was really important for us, because as we ask questions, people are going to want to know, you know, what that end cost is going to be. And that's really important for us as we go down this journey, making sure that those are two facilities that we can build and that we can expand and grow with.
Coming from a business background, did you have a fairly good number on contingency costs also on that, or did you say this is what it's going to cost, but you don't know really what's going to be in the future?
We did build in a contingency, mainly because we've seen such rapid escalation in some of the costs that we've seen across the board when it comes to construction and fire apparatus. So we did want to build in a little bit of a buffer, but at the same time make sure that we try to keep things as realistic as we could.
Okay. I just wanted to comment on the jail bond, that I was part of the Concerned Citizens of Canyon County Committee and still am, but as an advisor. But well, number one, I think they tried to shove it down everybody's throat is the reason it failed. Number two, the numbers they had was like a Taj Mahal of the jail system, which that didn't go over very well. And they didn't have their numbers accurate either. I mean, they wanted this new jail, but 50% of the juvenile hall was empty. And, you know, well, how do you utilize that, you know, to reduce those costs? Anyway, that's neither here nor there. How will this, is probably for the chief, how will this coordinate into that Charles project that we're looking at? Is that going to be part of this whole plan, or how does that work?
Specific to which project was that, Councilmember?
Charles project, they're on Karcher and
Oh,
Lake.
yeah. That is definitely part of the plan, is to utilize that property for Station 4 as we look to build that facility. That would be, you know, one of the key pieces of having that 2 acres that will be deeded to the city, and that we can utilize that property for that facility.
Which will keep the cost down a little bit, because you don't have to
Correct.
pay for the land, right? Okay. And, you know, one of the most frequent questions or comments that I get is, why do we have to have 6 or 7 or 8 vehicles at one house when there's a call? So how are we gonna handle that?
Essentially, what we have currently within the system, and it's actually improving as we've increased our capability in Canyon County with all of our fire departments, is we have call triaging, meaning when a call comes into the 911 center at Canyon County, they will base the information they receive from that person calling 911 will then dictate the type of resources that are responding to that incident. So it may just be, if it's a medical emergency, it might just be an ambulance, but it could also be just a fire engine or both, depending upon the nature and the severity of the type of medical incident that's occurring. And that's one of the ways we can triage and respond the right resources to the right emergency.
And the reason I asked that question is because here about a month ago, there was a veteran that called me, and he had his leg amputated about 2 years ago, something like that. But anyway, he needed some medical help, and he called me and said there were 5 vehicles that showed up at his house, and you know, he said, I need the medical deal, but he said, I don't think we need 5 vehicles to show up at my house to take care of it. So that's the reason I asked that.
It's an excellent point. You know, at times, depending upon the information that comes in through the call-taking system, it can dictate more vehicles or fewer vehicles, depending upon where those questions land. But our goal is always to send the right resources to the incident and not saturate an incident unless we really need to send additional resources.
Mm-hmm.
We have, as a county-wide system, limited resources, so we share a lot of resources, but at the same time, we want to make sure that we're good stewards, because one of the safety issues we always talk about in the fire service is responding code 3 with lights and sirens to an incident. We want to minimize that risk to our firefighters as well as to the community. but also provide excellent service.
So we can tell taxpayers that you folks are working on a system where we don't have that many vehicles show up at one, okay.
Constantly. And it's always a work in progress where we
Mhm.
evaluate, on an ongoing basis, the types of calls we respond to, and we adjust those, and we can identify what resources need to go to those events.
Okay, and just the last thing on comment, I have bonds versus levy. I'm definitely a bond guy when it comes to things like this, because then I think the taxpayers have some skin in the game versus a levy. It's more of a dictatorial type thing on the levy, but, if we could go bond, that'd be great. I know we'd satisfy a lot of people, so,
Thank you, sir.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other questions? Okay, thank you again. Really do appreciate the work and effort that's gone into that, so.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. We really appreciate your time.
Okay, very good. So that ends this workshop, and this is a workshop for information only. No decisions were made, and so we will conclude that, and we will return in just a few minutes. We'll give the council a 5-minute break, get up and stretch their legs, and then we'll begin our regular scheduled city council meeting. I think